Take two.
Okay, so let's start off where we left off. So, before you came here, did you have any preconceived notions about America that, like, turned out to be true or even turned out to be false?
I'm not really sure about preconceived notions. I think I had no idea really what to expect. I mean, I grew up watching plenty of American TV shows and, of course, listening to American pop music. And I have always wanted to go and visit the United States. I've always been attracted by that culture, and it was like a big mysterium for me. But yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. So I think I was kind of just really curious and open, and yeah, I had no specific idea in mind, I think.
You experienced any type of like culture shock when you first got
A
here?
lot. My first year was horrible. It was a disaster. Well, maybe I would say the first semester or so. I don't know. It was well, I didn't come over with a whole lot of money, and I made a little bit of a salary as a grad student because I came over to teach German in exchange for getting a education and getting a master's degree. So I was super busy preparing for classes. I never taught before in my life. That was my very first time. And but yeah, so the first couple of months my budget was extremely tight, and I was shocked by how expensive food is.
Yeah.
In Germany, food is not that expensive, and good quality food.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost like 8-9 pounds in my first couple of months. I went back over Christmas. My family was shocked. And 8 pounds, I wasn't overweight to begin with, so that it made a big difference already. And yeah, I didn't like the food. I had huge problems with the food, and I usually spent like 3 hours at a supermarket trying to figure out what I can buy. I was also constantly reading the ingredients of everything and trying to understand what that is, and then okay, this can of tomatoes costs $2. Do I really need that? And to me, that was an outrageous price, because in Germany that would be, I don't know, maybe 50 cents at most.
Wow.
And I was just like, I don't know. So very often I skipped meals. I didn't eat properly, and I was too busy to engage with everything. Everything was too much, too loud. And I just wanted to go home for the first couple of months because I was hungry, I didn't like the food, and I couldn't afford the good food. So I think that was a big factor.
I think that we noticed that a lot because we just came back from studying abroad, and everything over there tastes better. It was cheaper, so it was confusing to come back here and for things to be more expensive, and it wasn't even the quality that it should have been,
Yeah.
what you're actually buying. So it's like,
that's-
if you want to buy organic, it's so expensive here.
Yeah.
So-
And I had to go because to an organic store, just because that was the only one in walking distance. I didn't have a car. I didn't know my area very well. I had no time to figure things out because I was constantly in my classes, the ones that I took and the ones that I taught. And at some point I just gave up and just didn't eat because I couldn't figure it out. And the things that I did get to eat, I didn't enjoy very much, so I just ate to stay alive, basically.
Wow.
But it got all better. You just need to learn a culture. So.
Do you think the language barrier might have played a part in not really knowing your surroundings very well?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I did have a lot of nervous situations when I needed to ask somebody for something, and at school I was usually fine because academics they speak properly, and they speak also with a different pace, and they're used to foreigners.
Sure.
But people on the street, maybe not so much, and you have background noises, and whenever it came down to ordering in a restaurant, I think that was the worst for me, because the waiters, they tell you all the specials, the stuff that's not written anywhere. It's loud in those restaurants. It's also louder than in German restaurants. I had problem hearing. I didn't understand what they were saying, so usually I ended up saying the last thing, whatever you just said, and it's going to give me that, if it was not on the menu, of course. But then the follow-up questions, do you want that this or this or this way? And it's like, I don't know, just give me something. It's like, yeah, too many options then. But I think the language otherwise didn't play a huge role. I did notice, though, that it was the first couple of weeks I was very exhausted every night, because when you speak English most of the time, everything is transitioning, and that's very exhausting because your brain is rewiring.
Mm-hmm.
So but that's a good thing because you expand your horizon. And,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In your experience, do you think Americans have preconceived notions about Germany?
oh yeah,
and Germans?
absolutely. You know, not necessarily bad ones all the time. Usually whenever I ran into an American, and they like to talk. I mean, that's the same here in Texas, and you know, my port of arrival basically was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. People are also very friendly, and they like to talk. Just random strangers on the street, if they notice you're lost, they kind of try to help you, which is very nice. And then sometimes, oh, where are you from? They pick up on your accent. And then, oh yeah, you know, my great-grandfather came from Germany. Everybody had some kind of connection to it. And some people would just talk about German engineering, German beer, or they would, you know, one person even started conjugating a whole verb all the way through. So like just a random German word, and so, but it was usually friendly. So I never had an unpleasant encounter. But you know, things that you hear like, oh, Germans are very efficient all the time. So people would usually assume that, and yeah. So and so for preconceived notions. But I think I also met, but not at the beginning. Later on, I sometimes met people who thought that Germany is still not dealing with its Nazi past, or still maybe supportive of right-wing extreme ideas or Hitler, and that is not the case. I mean, the current political situation is that everything shifts more towards the right all over Europe, actually. But still, Germans are very much engaged in the discourse on what happened in the Third Reich. And so many Americans were still believing that students in school don't learn about it, which is absolutely not true. It's being dealt with in school until students have had enough. So those things were maybe more on the negative side, but nothing extreme. You know, they would just ask, so what do you guys think about Hitler? They're kind of wondering, are you guys still thinking that guy was okay? So, you know, so more like that. But nobody was like directly offensive or any such thing. But,
the professor for this class, Dr. Kataria, she actually played a movie for us, and we saw in Germany how they were taught about the past and how there's signs everywhere that refer to it, and they're very like empathetic about it. So
yeah, there's lots
it's
and lots
interesting
of
that you said that.
lots
so.
of commemoration, and I have just come across a lot of Americans here who were assuming that we don't talk about it, but we do. And probably we do talk a lot more about these very difficult times in history than, for example, Americans do about their own.
That was the point of the whole.
And I taught, for example, a couple of times a German culture course from 1945 until now. And we call that, it's a huge word, it's called Vergangenheitsbewältigung, which means coming to terms with the past, specifically meaning the the Nazi past. And that was a huge topic, like especially the late 60s. The 68ers actually kicked that one off, and in the 70s. And it's something that is still it's coming up over and over and over again. And that's it's a big kind of discourse that's kind of in a way timeless. And some people say, oh, it's time, we need to get over that. And then there are people who always say, no, we need to hold on to it, and we keep that in our memories and keep that alive. So, but it's a very big term, and many American students in my class are always shocked by how much Germany engages with its own negative past. That, you know, that they are actually just looking constantly right into it, rather than just saying, okay, happened, let's move on.
I think America could learn from that in lots of ways.
Well, we discussed that,
Yeah.
and some students were thinking, you know, we were problematizing that kind of concept, and some students were thinking that very same thing, and others probably, you know, were not of that opinion. But we didn't tell them you must do this exactly the same way, but it did come up, and some students expressed that they would believe it would benefit
definitely
America
an
as well.
interesting point. So
It hurts to look at your own dirty past, of course.
Of course.
But
we can only start getting better once you acknowledge that they're still suffering. So interesting.
We're gonna switch it up a tiny
yeah,
bit.
I'm pretty sure you guys have other things to
No,
do.
No, you're totally fine. It's really nice to hear that, because I mean, like, a lot of people do have that type of, like, you know, still to like till this day, they have that type of like notion towards you guys. But makes
Just
sense
think,
to
like, you
see
know,
that.
those are the Nazis, but well, there are always
They're-
people who support the right-wing ideas, and right now there is a new kind of wave, but it's not, it's considerably, it's a growing group, which is very concerning, but whenever there is action like that happening, there's always a much bigger counter group. So it's actually, Germany is really has developed quite a bit, and right now there are new tendencies that are very concerning, very alarming but that's the majority of the Germans who do find those alarming and concerning. So I hope that is going to even out again in the future.
I hope so too. So generally speaking, in America, we work at like 9 to 5 in corporate jobs, and we're supposed to be known as a country that has like the longest hours. In comparison to Germany, do you feel like Americans work a greater number of hours?
Yeah, I would say a greater number of hours. Maybe that comes this notion of the efficiency again into place. I feel like Germans get more things done in a shorter amount of time, but the longer hours, that's definitely true.
Do you mind me asking how many hours a day did you work when you were like?
I had an 8-hour job.
8 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and that we worked in 3 shifts, morning, late, and night. And I think the night shift was a little shorter, just to even out, because there's always trade unions, especially those kinds of factory jobs. The workers are very, very much protected, and every break, every minute is regulated, and they have to take the break, and they can't work overtime, or they have to get paid. But it was an 8-hour job that started, I believe, at 7, and then I don't know. It's been too long, but it was an 8-hour day.
Do you remember if it was like Monday through Friday?
It was
weekends, or?
Yeah, it was Monday through Friday, and that was for this kind of factory job. And the weekend for Germans is a sacred thing, so you don't really mess with people's weekends. Of course, there are jobs that you have to be on duty. I mean, like doctors, firefighters, and such, police. But like the regular kind of office job is actually on Fridays also. Usually they don't go until 5 most of the time. So that's very much regulated then.
Okay.
Before I hand it off to Sarah, I have one more question for you from my end. So, in America, when it comes to like professional like contact or meeting, like formal meeting, we'll hold like a handshake for like 3 seconds. But we did hear in other places like Africa, they'll hold people's hand like generally loosely, kind of for like a long time. So when it comes to like meeting someone formally for a business in Germany, how would you do so?
I think it's probably the same. I mean, like the way we were shaking hands before entering the office, that's pretty much the same. And it's usually, I have been taught a firm handshake. That was basically my aunt responsible for that. So just handing somebody like this weak hand is like, she always said, it's like a dead fish. So you have to have a firm handshake.
I think we're similar to that in America.
Yeah, for
And it's
sure.
probably similar.
It's like strong, firm handshake.
Yeah, and just like, I don't count seconds, but 3
Right.
seconds would probably be, that's about right. So I think in that regard, it's very similar.
Yeah, because normally like in other countries, they'll kiss on the cheek, handshake, but
Yeah, that in Germany has become a thing among friends. Not in the past, people were very formal with each other more in the past, but in the past 20 years or so, or 30, the kisses on the cheek have become a thing. Not among men, but men, women, or women among each other when they're good friends with each other.
okay, cool.
Interesting. So I think we're going to shift gears just a little bit kind of into hiring in Germany. Do you think there's different standards as far as hiring in Germany than there are in the US? And you can talk about any of the jobs that you've had and kind of how they might compare.
Yeah, that's I don't know the job that I had at this cookie factory. I think I had a little interview with somebody there. So there wasn't a formal application I had to hand in because it was just a summer job for a student. And then I worked just for a couple of months as a part-time instructor at the University of Augsburg prior to coming back here for my PhD. And I think that was in the academic area, and I didn't have to submit an entire application. But right now I'm actually applying for a position in Germany because I will be going back to Germany next year. And I'm going to try to get a teaching job. It's looking pretty good right now. And I had to get my cover letter together and resume. But one thing that is really not that big of a deal that just comes to my mind right now is like letters of recommendation. They are not common. They are really not common. I think you can probably add them, but and I think most corporations would like to see a reference or have a letter accompanying the application, and that is actually very unusual in Germany.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
here in America, we use the letter of recommendations for a sense of like accountability and reliability. So over in Germany, how would they take into account your reliability and accountability, just by word of mouth, or?
Well, they meet you, and they get an impression from you.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't know if they may contact the previous employer. That I'm not sure about, because I never had like a previous
Right.
employer. You know, I had it out there when I was still a student. So I would assume that there's probably less background checking going on than here.
Okay.
And if and there's of course a time where the new candidate is probably on probation, and maybe it's easier to let go of that person. But I mean, they get an impression when they meet you in person.
Okay.
But yeah, the references and the recommendation letters, they are really very unusual and uncommon. I wasn't asked for one, for example, when I applied over there. I could have given them. I've applied for academic jobs here. I applied for over 70 positions when I got this one. I had all my stuff sent out all over the country. I had my reference letters, but I didn't need one for the German job market.
What are the worst times to travel to Germany for business?
You mean like commuting to work?
As far as maybe traveling from the United States to Germany for business.
Well, we have lots of holidays.
Okay.
Christmas, people have to take into consideration that on Christmas Eve, a lot of people may not even be working at all, or just half a day. And then we have 2 days of Christmas, the 1st and the 2nd.
Oh wow.
So everything is shut down during that time, unless of course again firefighters, nurses,
Of course.
All that stuff. But everything else is closed down. Then we have a lot of religious holidays throughout the year. And Day of German Unity, which is October 3rd. So May 1st, which is like the first day of May, and in some areas there's actually some vandalizing happening, and I think that's primarily in some parts of Berlin though, where many left extremes are going out on the street and they kind of causing chaos. So maybe if you are going to Berlin, maybe you want to avoid May 1st. Because I don't know.
Good to know.
Carnival, depending on the area you live in, if you go to business in Cologne, sometime in February, that shifts every day. It's like the Mardi Gras, basically.
Oh.
There are huge parades. Everybody's in costumes and partying. So that may interfere with your business. So it depends on the area you're in. If you have business to do in, like, say, Mainz, which is also a big carnival city, or Cologne, you need to be aware of Carnival. If you are, you need to be aware of all the holidays going on, most of them being religious, of course, so yeah.
So when you say pretty much everything is closed down, we say that in America too on Christmas, but of course like Walmart's going to be open.
No, everything is closed down.
Some fast food places are probably
You
going
have
to be
gas
open.
stations, that's when you have.
Yeah, so it's
That's it. You have gas
everything
stations.
really is
Everything
closed down.
is closed down.
Wow.
Yeah. And also at night, you don't have any shop that is open at night.
Wow.
Gas station. That's just the gas station.
Only the
But
gas
everything
station.
closes no later than like 8. And then and Sundays, everything is closed down. Okay, yeah, Sundays, I didn't mention that. So yeah, I don't expect anybody to be in their office or in a shop on a Sunday.
Is
You
that
have restaurants and
religious?
well, it probably comes from that, but it's just the weekend. Again, I said it's like sacred. You don't do any such thing at the weekends, and Sundays you really don't find anything. And many shops close down Saturday around noon already. In bigger cities, later in the afternoon, or sometimes even in the evenings, especially leading up to Christmas. But yeah, the weekend is truly a weekend. There's no business happening anymore.
Interesting.
Awesome.
Alright, cool. Go ahead, Natalie.
Sure you did that one.
Oh, excuse me. In America, we tend to be kind of a culture of once you turn 18, you're kind of on your own, out of the house. We're expected to be responsible for our own lives and careers and marital status and things like that. And we've heard in certain other countries like Japan, people are more about the collectivist social group, which is different in America where you're very individualistic, and we were wondering in Germany, kind of how does that compare to America? Is it more collectivist? Is it more individual?
I would probably say it's somewhere more in the middle, because you're not expected to be completely on your own when you're 18. I mean, your parents are still going to receive money for you as a child. So that's another thing. There's a thing called Kindergeld, which means children money. So when somebody has a child, they're getting monthly payments until the child is 25 years of age, or has an entire job training completed. So the parents are getting money for every child they have, and it accumulates. And that money is to be used for the child's benefit. So the parents are considered to be in charge of their child until he or she can be on their own. So have studies completed or a job training. And vocational training is a big thing in Germany. In that regard, they are not completely on their own. Many choose to leave the house, but not necessarily already at 18. Many of them move out, and I would say in their early 20s. So it's like a smooth transitioning.
Okay.
But the parents are still supporting. In most instances, they're supporting the child until way into the 20s.
How would you describe, like, I guess the marriage aspect of it? Like we were saying, like in Japan, social groups kind of dictate, like, who you marry and stuff like that. Does Germany have anybody telling you who you're gonna marry, or?
No, I mean, like, for the most part, people choose their own spouses. Also, Germans tend to get married at a much more advanced age. So getting married in your early 20s is actually rather unusual. Very
What's the
unusual.
average age?
I haven't looked that up right now, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was actually the late 20s.
Maybe
Maybe
25, 26.
the earliest. I don't know. I may be wrong on that, but in fact, I rarely know anybody these days who gets married before the age of 25. And then there are different, of course, cultural groups happening, because Germany is getting more diverse. We've had lots of immigration, especially since the 1960s, where the guest workers came into Germany, and a lot of Turks, for example. And the offspring of the guest workers, the Turks especially, there's a lot more happening with them getting married earlier, and very often, not all the time, but very often the offspring of people with migrational backgrounds, especially from Turkey, they cannot necessarily choose that freely. So that's one branch of German culture, basically, with a migrational background.
Right.
So in America, we tend to really set schedules and stick to them. We also tend to say exactly what we mean, even if it means saying no to a deadline. We've heard that in other countries that it's rude to say no, and people will even say yes when they really mean no. So would you say Germany is more like America in the sense that we are very direct with everything we say? Or would you say Germany is more like, I guess more so like Asian countries, where you have to kind of read in between the lines of what people are saying?
Very direct. Probably more direct than the Americans. Because very often here, when, let's say the employer or the student, in my case I had more experience with professor-student interaction when I was a student, when you submit work and something is not really that great, say, well, you may want to just work that a little bit over, and, yeah, that's okay, that's good, but you need to work on this. In Germany, they would just tell you, this is bad work, you need to just do it again. So I would say they're actually a lot more straightforward. There's no sugarcoating. They're just like bam, right into the face most of the time. So I would say it's probably even more direct. And no is just, sometimes it's just the entire sentence.
In your opinion, what do you prefer? America?
And I have been here now for a good number of years, so I do appreciate the kindness.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of kindness. I'm also a big fan of directness, though. So I think it's possible to just tell somebody, you know what, this is actually not what we were looking for. You need to do this over, rather than just saying no. F. But yeah, there needs to be directness so people understand what's happening, but you may say it nicer.
Sure.
So maybe a healthy mix of both.
Okay, cool.
So we tend to focus on business more than personal relationships at work in America. For example, we're more comfortable with doing like a working lunch, like we'll have kind of a business meeting while having lunch. In other countries like France, it's considered very rude to talk about any kind of business over food. So is Germany more like America in the sense that they're more business oriented to where it would be more acceptable to kind of do a working lunch or a working dinner? Or would you say Germany is more like France or Japan where they want to build a really strong relationship before they start doing business with you?
Well, I think there's less overlaps happening with dinner, lunch, or such things. So food, I don't. The business lunches and business dinners are not a really big deal in Germany, I would say. But I have never been in that kind of job to kind of really judge that. But I don't think. I think this is way more emphasized here. Usually, in Germany, when somebody eats their food, they want to do it privately. I feel, unless they're somewhere in a conference or something like that. But I don't think that they really talk about business when they eat. I think we have a saying in German, and this is Bier is Bier and Schnaps is Schnaps. So beer is beer and Schnaps, like liquor, is Schnaps, So this is this thing and this is that thing. If you don't get them, you don't mix them together. Well, let's eat something first, and then maybe can.
Yeah.
What was that
So-
saying again?
Bier is Bier and Schnaps is Schnaps.
Okay.
I can
That's
write that down for you
interesting.
too if you want to.
Cool.
So I don't know. I sometimes I got used to this but I've never really liked it, especially when I was interviewing for positions. You're nervous. I could never eat really. And then you don't want to spill stuff on yourself.
Yeah.
You don't want to spit over the table when you explain something. It happens when you eat, right?
Sure.
So I always prefer, okay, let me just eat my meal and then you can have everything you want. But I mean, I do, as the people do here, but sometimes I'm happy when I can just eat my meal and maybe we can have a friendly conversation about
Sure.
random things, but we don't necessarily need to talk about business while we eat because, I don't know.
So when you say
I wouldn't call it rude. I think it's just like something that I don't enjoy very
Sure.
much.
when you say Germans would probably prefer to eat privately, that means more without the business, if I'm understanding correctly, more without kind of any kind of business conversation, but not maybe privately alone, but like privately, kind of as you were saying, with like a random kind of conversation, maybe getting to know each other while you get to eat.
And I don't know how, exactly. So the topic could be more casual
Sure.
for that.
Like
and-
family or
family,
interests,
friends,
hobbies, things like that.
things like that. And I don't know if it's a really big deal now to go out with actually business partners to have lunch or dinner. Probably, because I mean they're doing lots of different intercontinental things, and of course Americans would want to do that.
Sure.
And a German company who needs to get in touch with a American company, they need to play also by their rules because they want
Of
to
course.
attract that business partner.
Of course.
So there may be things shifting, but I think from the German standpoint, I think it's easier to win a German over when he feels comfortable and can eat.
So
and
build that relationship first.
build the relationship first, I
Good.
would say.
Yeah, that'll be really valuable for our
because
presentation.
coziness, being comfortable is very, very important in German culture.
So from what we've learned in class and what we've heard, Germans are always on time. And if you're not early, then you're pretty much late. Would you say this is true in business to kind of show up 5-10 minutes before things are actually supposed to begin?
Yeah, I think that wouldn't hurt. Certainly right on time, but maybe like a minute or two at least earlier, maybe 5 minutes earlier. So yeah, being late is frowned upon very much. Yeah.
And is it frowned upon because it's considered rude, or you're considered uninterested?
It's
or?
rude because you're messing with somebody else's time.
Sure.
And you said 6 o'clock, so show up at 6 o'clock. Again, you're direct. You mean what you say.
Sure.
If you mean 6:05, then say 6:05. Yeah, but 6 is the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced a situation like that in a business setting, like where you might have come early and then, let's say, like the boss came late?
Not in Germany, but again, I didn't spend enough time in that in Germany working. I noticed one of my professors. He walked in on a PhD defense late because anyway, that was very embarrassing. But that happened here. That happened in Pittsburgh. No. So, but no, I have not experienced lateness from a superior in Germany, but probably because I haven't spent enough time there
Interesting.
working.
So in America, we're very open with our bosses or people in higher positions than us, and offer suggestions freely. And we learned in class that some Asian countries, it would be considered rude or it would be considered challenging in order to bring up suggestions to your boss without their permission, or saying, hey, please come and give us feedback or suggestions. In your experience, could you tell us if German is more like America in the fact that it would be open to suggestions for people in a higher ranking position, and more like Asian countries where if it's not asked, it wouldn't be appropriate to give a suggestion?
I think these days it would be appropriate to make suggestions. I think it probably is always depending on how it's being phrased, because you can say it like being like the know-it-all, or you can just say it like really suggesting that you have a genuine interest in improving the business. So I think that probably would be very much appreciated to giving your input. Also depends pretty much on your occupation, because when I worked in that cookie factory, I don't think that would have been a place for me to just voice my criticism, because there was lots of hierarchy problems in that company. There are a lot of women working there together, and they would talk about each other behind their backs and stuff like that. So I don't think that would have been the right environment for that, but in a corporation, in a business where they want to excel in what they do, I think that would be not considered rude, just because you want to contribute.
So if we just use academia for an example, would you be more comfortable going to a department head maybe in America to give a suggestion, or in Germany? And like you said, phrasing always matters, but which do you think you would be more comfortable with?
I think I can only talk there from a student's perspective, because I was a student only in Germany, and I know that my heart always sank whenever I went to talk to a professor, because there's more distance happening between students and professors. And I had to really learn being okay with just walking up to my professor when I went to Pittsburgh and just kind of starting the conversation. I was just used to a very much distantiated relationship. The professor is way up there, and the student is, you only go there if you have a really serious question and you must see that person. But here students just sometimes casually stop by and they just want to talk a little bit, and I enjoy that. But that's something I wasn't used to when I was a student. I think I had one professor in Augsburg in Germany where I studied, and he was actually in American studies, so he was very Americanized. Maybe that's why I felt comfortable talking to him, because he was always very easygoing, and some others, they were kind of like really uptight, like so and then I was always afraid of that.
So it would be easier in Germany if there was more of an invitation to come by and talk.
Well, this is the office hour time, and I do need to go there and talk about my paper topic. I have to go.
Okay.
But I would sleep miserably beforehand, and I would stand there with my heart pounding. So that's usually how it went, and it seems to be a very different situation here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. In America, we tend to live in order to work, and individual success is a very big deal. So that we heard that in other countries like Sweden, people do not necessarily care about money accumulation. It's more about taking care of the collective group. Would you say Germany is more like America or Sweden in that sense?
It's probably, again, like the healthy middle, I would probably say. I mean, it may also be related to the fact that Germany is a social market economy, so it's kind of, it's capitalism, but it always has the greater good for everybody in mind, because it comes from history. Everybody after World War II lost pretty much everything. Some people had experienced actually 2 wars, like World War I and II. They lost everything twice, so people were kind of traumatized when they were getting their country together again. And when West Germany was founded in '49, they actually followed Ludwig Erhard's principles of the social market economy, because that granted security, because that was what people were craving. They wanted to be sure they would never have to lose anything again in their life. So Germans are pretty much obsessed by everything being secure. You're always having insurance for at least 5 different things. And if you are losing your job, there's a social net that catches you, and there's different programs that kick in. So I think in that regard, you do want to accumulate luxuries. I mean, Germans love their cars, they love going to travel. They love to work to get these luxuries. They postpone families, having their own family, just because they want to embrace their independence and you know,
Sure.
maybe afford some other things. But on the other hand, they also enjoy being part of this community where it's very hard to completely fall through the grid. So, and in that regard, I would say it's both. So you hear a lot less complaining about paying taxes, and the taxes are higher in Germany than here. But there's also a lot more coming from that society to support you if you need it.
So in America, we tend to be very entrepreneurial and like to start small businesses. And I don't know if you've seen the show Shark Tank, but we heard that in France, people are discouraged to, I guess, break free and start new businesses, unlike America where we just get up and go. Would you say Germans are more risk takers, or would you say they're more stuck in their like comfort zone and don't like to take big risks?
Probably the latter. But I think that's also depending on where you live. Maybe in the bigger cities you have a higher number of young entrepreneurs who would like to just take a risk and start their own business. But I think by comparison, people are probably a lot more conservative, and they would much rather be an employee who's not responsible for sustaining themselves. They receive their salary and everything is taken care of. So by comparison, probably they are not that much of a risk-taking society, just because it may still be from the past. They don't want to jinx things and enjoy their comfort and security.
So what do you think about a supermarket chain like Aldi's kind of expanding into American territory?
Oh, I like it because I like their products, and it's inexpensive groceries for people on a budget, and just because they can offer it for cheaper, not in the large variety, but they can offer it for cheaper because they have basically no service, like nobody's going to pack your bags. You have to put that little coin in the cart.
Sure.
Because they don't have people to do that for you, and it doesn't look, fancy or anything. But I like it because it offers people on a budget more opportunity to eat well and save some money. But they have to, of course, they have to get used to that they need to bag their groceries themselves,
Sure.
or pay money for bags they buy, or bring their own.
Sure.
Yeah. So I like that because, everybody here is struggling. Families trying to get by, and Walmart is not cheap. So you have a huge selection, but you have an opportunity to save more. So it's good for the competition, I would say.
And you get some food imported from Germany as well?
Some,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the grocery, of course, is coming from here,
Local,
and other products are also from the U.S. But there's some that are imported from Germany, which is nice. I enjoy getting some things. Like this morning, I brewed German coffee for my class, and I have that from Aldi because
Sure.
it's a good quality coffee, and I want them to experience that whenever they take a test. I bring cookies. They're also from Aldi, German cookies.
It's very nice.
That's
So I'm personally glad I have them here.
Yeah.
So the buys and cookies are great, but they're also more expensive.
So in America, we tend to focus on like the here and now. Instant gratification is big, as shown in credit card debt. So when people buy something, they don't worry about the future consequences. They just get it. Would you say Germany is more about instant gratification, or would you say they like to think about the long-term consequences?
The long term. Credit cards are really not a big deal in Germany. I think they are now more than they used to be, but most people I know actually who don't travel abroad, well, especially in the US, they don't even have a credit card because Germans are scared by the idea that they get free money and they kind of get into that trap and can't pay it back. And it is an interesting connection language-wise, because the word for debt and guilt are pretty much the same word in German. So
That's interesting.
debt is Schulden, which is basically a plural form, and guilt is Schuld, and they are both being written the same way. So actually, when you tell yourself I have debt, then also that evokes a sense of guilt, something bad. Another interesting thought there is, whenever you here in the U.S. you try to rent a car and you have no credit history, that's bad because they can't see if you are trustworthy in a monetary way. What I experienced that once here, I was very German for many years, and in my 5th year or so in the U.S. I had to rent a car because I had a job interview. I had to drive from Pittsburgh to somewhere in Ohio, and I needed a car. They wouldn't give me a car because I had no credit history. It's something that I had been extremely proud of, that I don't have debt. Because in Germany, if you need a debt report, then you you receive a sheet of paper that says no entries, and that's what you're looking for. Whoever, like let's say you want to apply for a job somewhere for the government or so, and you need to present them a report that lists the debt you have, you want to ideally have one that says no entries. So I thought always that's great. I am a blank sheet. I have no problems
And it's
there.
the
And then
complete opposite
and
here.
I couldn't get. I did end up getting a rental car, but I had to run over the airport all over the place and kind of find a different
Different
rental.
way to do it.
But
Wow.
it was a shock for me. Like, but I have my car. I have the money. This is my debit card. I can pay. Here's my money.
Yeah.
I trade my shiny stone for car. You know.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
and
in debt.
they didn't give me one. And I was just like, what? You know, I had to let
Yeah.
that sink in. And then I started, okay, I got a dummy card, and over the next 2 years, it's kind of limited to maybe $100 or something. And I started building my credit history. But it is something that I never wanted to have. I never wanted a credit card because, well, you make debt.
Yeah.
And you have a problem. But it's a very different way of thinking, and maybe that's interesting for you guys to know that there's actually debt is frowned upon, and the things that people make debt on are usually the big things, like when they build a house and they pay it down over a lifetime. That's normal that people do that, but you don't just because you want to buy that big TV, you don't go into debt or something.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Or cars, of course, you can pay down your car, like the big things.
Yeah.
But you don't go on a shopping spree just with your credit card.
Right.
It's very,
Yeah.
it's very uncommon. Very uncommon.
So in Germany, whenever you pick careers, do people think about what they want to do at the moment, or do they think about what they want to retire with?
I think it's still probably more the latter. It has gotten probably less intense over the past couple of decades. Many of my parents' generation, they were that's what they learn and that's what they stick to. And some people have a career change, but as a matter of fact, I know most people back home in Germany who stick to their career. So they're thinking long term. And plus they're going through a very extensive training. Like there are people who study, go to university, and then there are those who go through a vocational training. That means that's a 3-year-long training. They're already being paid during the whole process. One part school for that trade, and one part they work in the company. And with each year they advance, they work more in the company and spend less time at school. And they're being tested in the end, and then they're being certified in that particular kind of occupation. And so you have been going through a lot of trouble during that time, and then most of the time you stick to it and you advance your career. So most of the time I think people stick to what they really want to do. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I got my long-term sound bites. I think just go to next one. 20. Okay.
So in America, we believe that we can control our own destiny by our choices. So we believe that each thing that we do matters, and that we've heard that in other countries, they believe that everything is up to God and it's out of their hands. Do Germans believe that they can control their own destiny, or do they believe that the circumstances are outside of their control?
They're absolutely thinking they can influence things.
Right.
Yeah, they're very ambitious in changing things, and again, that may also be part of history, where after World War II, everything was in ruins, and Germany built itself up. Of course, also with the support of American money, but they put the manpower and woman power in it and built up the whole country in like no time. So it was like they did this basically with their own workforce.
Right.
The GDR, the wall came down because of the people going out on the street and demonstrating.
Yeah.
A peaceful revolution basically happening. Then right now Germany has very ambitious plans, of course, in becoming more sustainable. So I think they are really strongly believing that their actions can influence everything. So yeah, so they don't leave it up to a higher power. They think it depends on whatever they put into.
Okay. So in our class, we're taking international management with Dr. Kataria, and one of the things that we're really trying to do is, with the presentation that we're going to be giving, we're really trying to train the class on if they were going to move and to live and work in Germany. So we're really just trying to train the class on how to do business in Germany. Is there anything that we might have missed that you think is important to our
Like German
presentation?
business customs, just norms in Germany that you might face by living there, trying to assimilate to the culture?
Well, there's probably lots of different differences. I mean, Germany is probably like, I think that was one of the questions mentioned there. Germany is also actually very superstitious. They have very much a progressive culture, but they don't, for example, they don't congratulate anyone on anything before it actually happened. So maybe if you just don't want to blow off your business partner and he says, oh, it's my birthday tomorrow, don't congratulate him or her, because that means bad luck.
Is there any
So-
other superstitions like that?
Yeah, also like if somebody's expecting a baby, you wouldn't congratulate that person
Until
on-
they have the baby.
Mhm. You can say, this is amazing, I'm so happy for you. Or you can say, congratulations on your pregnancy. But you wouldn't congratulate her on the baby
Because
yet.
it hasn't happened
It
yet.
hasn't happened yet, it can go wrong.
Oh wow.
Okay, Germans are very superstitious. Somebody is having a birthday party, you cannot congratulate that person before midnight.
Wow.
Even if they party into it, you know. Everybody at 12, that's when, you know, yes,
Congratulations.
but don't do that before, people
Oh,
will
wow.
find that irritating. So that's something to be aware of, because you want to be friendly, you meet your business partner
Sure.
and say, oh, it's next week, yeah, happy early birth, no, no. They may actually already be used to Americans doing that, but it's not done in Germany at all.
That's
So
nice to know for someone who might be traveling there, just to
Yeah.
how to try to make friends. You know, people won't.
Yeah.
Be like,
So if you want to be just slick there, you can say, oh, I won't be around for that, but I hope you have a great party. You know, hey,
Okay.
I tell you happy birthday later.
all right, I like
So
it.
I don't know, maybe you can do it like that.
So what do you like best about working in America compared to Germany?
I like that it's, you know, very easy to talk to people. It's very, you know, everybody, you can go to your boss, as we talked about earlier, and just have a conversation without necessarily your heart pounding. And I'm not saying that this is always the case in Germany, it's just how it was for me at that time. I was like 20, 21, 22 years old, and maybe I wouldn't experience that these days. But I think there is a lot more, there's a lot more permeable kind of communication going on sometimes. And people are being very nice and casual with each other, versus it can also be intimidating when things are super formal all the time.
Do you see a significant difference? This is not really on our questions, but we've been speaking about America in a general sense, and I know that not everything can kind of carry over as generally German, generally American. But do you see a difference between Texas and Pittsburgh from working in both areas? Maybe on the friendliness, we've been known to be in Texas to be really friendly.
Well, Pittsburgh was also very friendly, because in that particular case of Pittsburgh, I mean, both places were very friendly, so I was very fortunate to come here to both places. Pittsburgh is basically an old steel town, so you have a lot of blue-collar people there, and they are very proud of their heritage, and they are, you know, nobody's kind of nose in the air kind of type. Everybody's pretty much down to the ground. And even in academia, I think that carries over to some extent, that, you know, everybody's very helpful and such. But I do notice that people are more formal with each other here. First name basis is not necessarily a thing. So sometimes when I receive emails, people like colleagues from like registration, or sometimes even faculty, addressing me as Dr. Franke. And like, okay, well, I'm used in Pittsburgh, everybody was like first name basis. That was assumed that, hey, we're gonna be on first name basis. And here, you get a lot more ma'am
Yeah.
and sir. And in the beginning, I was irritated because I thought, does that make me now old? Or I don't know. I don't know how. I know now that this is a matter of respect. Of course, it doesn't have to do with like age, but in the beginning, you're like, I don't know. But a lot more people, like actually also Miss Yvonne, for example. So that's being used more by some people. So the that's something I wasn't used to between the north of the United States and here so much. So a lot more like very friendly, absolutely agree, but more formal in addressing each other until you maybe break through that barrier.
So would you say that Pittsburgh had a low power distance between the professors and the students, but here we have a little bit of a higher power distance to where we call each other by our last name and we don't know
Yeah,
our
but not
first name?
necessarily from like to your superior, just between colleagues, you know, people you are technically on eye level with. So again, somebody from registration or administrators from a different college or same college. So sometimes, and I would, in that case, I would just address them with Ms. or Mr. Or the academic title if they have it, and just sometimes if I really feel like really we can be informal, then I just write Yvonne.
Okay.
And then sometimes they just, you know, then we have first name basis.
Yeah, okay.
That's how I usually do that, but I noticed that here a lot more than I did in Pittsburgh.
Interesting. Is there also a go-to gift that Germans might give to one another in a business setting?
I think it may be common to have maybe a plague. Is that the word, a plague? That something can hang to the wall. I don't
A
mean
plaque?
a plaque.
Yeah.
No, yeah, the other one is the disease. Yeah, sorry.
The plague.
Yeah, hey, I have a plague for you. No, yeah. See, I kind of knew that this is not going to be the way you pronounce it. It was my English, right?
We're gonna chop the videos up anyway.
Okay,
So.
So
I'll
you're
leave
talking like-
leave that in for entertainment. That's fine.
Like an award, like a plaque.
Yeah, the plaque which says, hey, 10 years business
Okay.
exchange, XYZ, hang to the wall kind of thing. I don't
Okay.
know. I've seen that done among clubs. Like when, like, for example, I was part of a marching band and we would have a friendship with a Dutch marching band and we would take turns visiting each other and there was usually a plaque that was exchanged and kind of, I don't know, and I can see how that may also fly in the
Sure.
business setting. So, but I can otherwise not really think of any kind of.
So do you think a plaque would be more to commemorate a relationship versus like a financial goal? Like it would be more of, you know, we've partnered together for 5 or 10 years versus, you know, we've done a certain amount of dollars in business together.
I have trouble answering to that because I have never worked
Sure.
in such a setting. So I don't even know if that's a thing to bring a gift. Maybe they would celebrate that together in a way, but I don't know about gifts.
Sure.
I could maybe try to ask friends who work in a business setting, but I don't wanna lie to you guys and say
No.
yeah,
Yeah, sure.
absolutely. I've just seen plaques like
Plaques.
that or any kind of items that can
Sure.
look nice in an office. That
Right.
you
Of
just,
course.
you know,
Like a certificate and stuff.
something like
Yeah.
that, or something that is actually engraved and you put that on
Oh,
the
yeah.
wall, you know, something
So
shiny, nice.
if I'm coming to Germany for the first time and meeting someone for the first time, it's not common to give a certain gift to someone the first time you meet them?
Not necessarily, unless for a host, for example. If you're staying at somebody's house, then you know, for example. But many times when you're on business trip, you are in a hotel
Hotel,
somewhere,
sure.
right? I think it wouldn't be frowned upon. I think if you brought like some Texas pecans, pralines or whatever, you
Sure.
know, I think they would find that very nice and very genuine. Like, oh, that's neat. That's something
Cool.
from Texas.
Something from
Nice
I
to
think
know.
Yeah.
I think you couldn't. I think it's not like a must, but I think they would enjoy that. They would just think, oh, how neat, you know.
Cool.
So here's a little reading from my home.
Sure.
So I think that would not be a bad thing. If you are in touch with a specific person, maybe you have been in exchange over email for a while, and then you finally meet, and then say, hey, I bring you just a little greeting,
little gift.
a little gift from
Sure.
from back there or so, or I don't know.
So this is like our last question, and thank you so much for all of your answers. They're gonna be very helpful
Fantastic.
for
Yeah.
Okay, and I
Our-
realize I've been all over the place.
No, we're
Yeah,
gonna
no,
go
they've
back
been
and fix
perfect.
all this.
Okay.
It's gonna be awesome for our
And a lot of the
presentation.
things you've expanded on are
Yes.
things we really want to get into the presentation.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's,
so I think our professor's gonna be really happy with this. So thank you
Awesome.
again.
and
No,
we've
you're
learned a lot as
welcome.
well.
You're welcome.
So the last question is basically, for average vacation time in Germany, I know you only worked there for, as a student, but is it comparable to the US, how we have, it's not at all? Can you expand on that?
The average vacation day number, aside from holidays, and we have plenty of those, is 28 days paid
Wow.
vacation.
So it's a month of
And
paid
it-
vacation, basically.
Yeah, over the entire year, and that's average though. So
Sure.
there can also be higher. Statistics, I just looked up a little bit. So many Germans usually take 26, so they don't necessarily take all of it. But some do, of course. It can also be higher because it's just an average, but 28. So they're very high up there. I think only some Scandinavian countries have more.
Sure.
And this is the saying I had earlier.
Do you mind writing the name of the cookies that
Oh,
you
yeah.
said we could get
Oh,
at
yeah.
Market
Yeah,
Street? Because
yeah.
we might,
You
you
should
just write on the
definitely
back of
let us
your
know.
cookies.
Yeah.
Because we might get them and bring them to class.
Aldi doesn't have those because
But
Aldi is
Market Street.
Aldi is no brand. That's why everything is so
Yeah.
cheap.
Okay.
But Balsen,
Is
there
there,
are like the most famous cookie that Germany probably has is Leibniz. It has no chocolate on it, which I like chocolate, so I don't buy it. But it's like a rectangular cookie.
Okay.
It looks like it has little teeth around, and it's just called a Leibniz cookie, like the mathematician.
Okay.
You know?
Oh, very cool.
Awesome.
And it also has this cookie surrounded with chocolate, which is my go-to cookie.
maybe we'll get half
But-
and half.
Yeah,
I
we
know.
know.
Yeah.
But this one is in a yellow package. It's very classic, and I
Okay.
think the design hasn't changed in like ever. And Bison, they have been around for many decades
Okay.
also.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
Just one
Yeah.
more question about the vacations. Does that include maternity leave for women?
No, that's extra.
How much extra is it for-
6 weeks prior to the calculated birth,
Wow.
there you can go into Mutterschutz, which means mother's protection. So 6 weeks prior, of course, some women go into labor earlier or later, but it's like usually it's 6 weeks. And if you have medical problems, it may even be sooner. And then you get, they call it now parental leave, and the parents can decide if they want to split it up or have it both together. But they get basically 2 years. So sometimes the woman takes the entire time, or they split it up.
Half and half.
Half and half, so they made it a lot more flexible.
Wow.
But they don't have to go back for quite a while because they believe that the child at that young age needs the attention by the parents. It's too young to be given to, and I refer to the child as it because in German it's neuter, das Baby. It's basically it's neuter. Don't want to be disrespectful.
No, you're
But,
good. It.
Yeah, it's meaning like we have 3 genders and this is the neuter one. So there's lots and lots of time to do that actually. So and again, let me just double check that very quickly because I don't want to lie. Elternzeit, parents' time. Elternzeit. Yeah, and they're receiving a portion of that salary, and the company has to take them back when they come back. Oh gosh, the Germans didn't talk too much here. I don't know. I can look that up very quickly. But it's an extended period of time where the parent who chooses to stay at home gets a portion of the last salary.
Wow. That's awesome.
Great.
So, and that's separate. I'm really talking about strict vacation days. That's only
Right.
for the employees' use, aside from all the holidays that are happening. And I told you already that Germany has many holidays.
Mhm.
Pentecost, then 1st of
May.
November, 1st of May, 3rd of October.
Wow.
A lot more. There are more.
We'll have to look them up, and then maybe we can get like a number on each one, and then.
Yeah. So vacation days are plentiful
Wow.
in Germany.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Any more questions?
I think that's all the questions we have.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank
We got
you.
enough of
if
okay.
if you would like to come and see our presentation and you're available, we could definitely send you when and where it will be if you'd like to come and watch it.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Is it gonna be over
Only
lunch?
if you'd like to.
If you'd like to,
Yeah,
yeah.
she would love that.
No, what time is it
It's
usually
on
happening?
November 27th. It's on the Tuesday
At
and
11.
at 11.